Our small van wound back and forth up the hillside. We were unsure what we were about to find. The travels had taken us south through Mexico into Guatemala to its capital city. And after adjusting our bearings and exchanging new currency, a local commuter bus had taken us to the idyllic postcard town of Antigua, Guatemala. The road had been full of potholes and strenuous detours, but as we got near the end, I could feel the warmth at the light of the end of the tunnel. We were taking AromaVentures' journey to a place of tranquil energy, beautiful views, and warm souls.
And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand.
This place was called Earth Lodge, located high in the jungle-covered hills in a small village known as El Hato outside of Antigua.
I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know.
The road wasn't easy getting here, but the arrival was comparatively seamless.
Run, 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 run. Hey, 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 oh dear, what the fuck have we here?
Antigua, Guatemala is a city rich in history with a record of natural disasters. As the richest capital in Central America region for the former Spanish monarchy, this town was abandoned due to continual earthquake devastation in the late 1700s. After 10 years of civil war, the kingdom split into provinces and eventually led to independence from Spain, with the capital of the new nation of Guatemala being relocated into present-day Guatemala City. Now Antigua is considered small from what it once was. Still, reconstructed ruins of former Spanish cathedrals and governmental palaces are what dominate the architecture of this area. It's common to see high volumes of American and European travelers or retired expats through the town due to the vast amounts of activities available in this region. The kindness of the citizens were some of the most genuine people we ever encountered on our travels. The beauty of the region, surrounded by active volcanoes, right outside every window, kept this area exciting and wonderful to visit. It's not simple getting to Earth Lodge. You have to want it. It had been built by hand and since managed by a couple of young travelers. They had fallen in love with each other and then fallen in love with the region. Now married with 2 small children, this family plays a vital role in the development and support of its local community. Earth Lodge is highly praised by anyone who has the fortunate encounter of making it to its far-off location. High in the hills above Antigua, you begin to wind down the hill as it emerges to the end of the path like it was waiting for you all along. Welcome to Earth Lodge. With views from every direction down upon the Antigua Valley, most people become entranced by the activity of the nearby volcanoes and tranquil atmosphere as you just sit in the chairs staring out upon the views.
We decided to come back and see the land, and we came up here and loved it.
Said okay.
So when we came up here, I would say that was our intention, was to open a business.
Mm-hmm.
And
We did?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is.
The Energy is a community of happy people in search of the quality of life perhaps incapable of finding in cities.
Earth Lodge is successful because it's kind of just a little bit different. There's really not anything like this close to Guatemala City. As you guys have seen when you've been here, you get a lot of local guests, which is great. And you know, it's kind of cool because every room is a little bit different. So we have like the tree houses, which are up in the trees, and we have the cabins, which are in the woods. And then, yeah, every time Drew builds a room, he does it a little bit differently, which I think is pretty cool.
Every room carries its own unique charm and design. Nothing seems exactly the same as the neighboring tree houses and cabanas. However, collectively, everything fits perfectly into the style of what Earth Lodge stands for.
Most people come to kind of relax and lay in a hammock and look at the view, but we have yoga classes now. There's hiking around. Yeah, and then with the avocado farm, we're harvesting a couple times a year, and that's just awesome to have guacamole.
Generally we have maybe about 400 trees, but some don't make it. They tend to all ripen in one time, maybe over 4 to 6 weeks depending. So the main harvest will get wholesaled and the beginning and the end will go to the restaurant.
I think in 10 years, we'll probably still be here, to be honest. But yeah, our kids will be running it and we'll be kicking back, having margaritas. Right?
Okay.
That sounds good.
Entonces tenemos que ir al mercado a traer el maíz, cocinarlo al fuego por 2 horas, después frío el siguiente día, el otro día, entonces vamos al molino en los horneros.
With my halfway Spanish skills, I've been trying to learn everything I could, especially from the culinary elements.
Vamos a quitar la avena, después vamos a desinfectarlas, después vamos a cocerlas. Tiene que llegar ni duro, ni muy aguado cuando está preparado ya la masa. Aquí no ponemos la masa, aquí, atrás, sí, okay. No adelante.
Catalina is one of the main cooks and long-standing employees at Earth Lodge. She and her kids have lived up the path from Earth Lodge since it first began construction.
Le quitan las hojas y queda el maíz. Entonces con el dedo lo empiezan a quitar todo el maíz. Y solo queda lo de adentro que se dice chilote. Y ya el chilote lo tiran y ya el maíz lo van a vender.
Catalina offered to take Alyssa and me to the market and show us around. This market runs every day of the week, but 3 days a week it's especially booming with activity. It's a labyrinth of stalls winding in a haphazardly order, offering you a full day of exploring. When we had what we needed for the recipes Catalina planned to teach me about, we gathered our purchases and headed back to Earth Lodge. The first thing we needed to do was make the masa.
Bajar por ahí, solo voy a dejar la masa en la entradita.
Masa is the main component of what makes tortillas and tamales, among other traditional dishes within Guatemala. The way masa is made is by taking dried corn kernels, soaking them in a lime-based solution. Not to be mistaken, this is calcium hydroxide, not the citrus fruit.
¿Qué quieres? Muy suave o dura. Es la mano, uno como lo quiere, es lo mismo.
The product we are sending you is a dried out version of this dough that's ground back down into a powder after being made. Simply adding water back to the flour recreates the original dough.
Desayuno, a veces tortillas, almuerzo, tortillas, ceno, tortillas. Entonces por eso consumimos mucho. Casi no pan.
As Catalina's precision and speed dwarfed our own abilities, we laughed it off, quickly learning the process of tortilla making.
Con esto se hace masa, se hace el tamal en Guatemala, se hacen los chuchitos, pupusas, tamalitos con frijoles, con chipilines.
Afterwards, I went to her home to cook atop her cast iron wood fire stove. There, we toasted and browned vegetables and spices for a local stew.
Es el plato típico en Guatemala, pero en algunas aldeas como aquí lo preparan para las bodas.
Pepion is a rich, robust Guatemalan chili-like soup that has many variations depending on where in the country you are. Many Guatemalans that we met who knew of Catalina's pepion said that her stew was by far the best they'd ever ate in their lives. Finally, Catalina had me help with the time-consuming process of making tamales.
Abajo quema, va a tener un olor malo. No bien. Entonces ahora lo más es abajo, todo no de abajo.
Tamales are something that's often done in bulk, so the extras can be saved for later use.
50 tamales, 10 libras de masa.
As I sat there tying together nearly 100 tamales, Catalina began to become impressed that I was competent in the kitchen. During my time at the Earth Lodge and cooking alongside Catalina, it was phenomenal to see how life works high in these Guatemalan hills. Alright, so Pepion stew is an awesome Guatemalan find. Pepion's a really robust stew where you're charring all these vegetables and spices and peppers and then blending it together and cooking it down. You can keep it vegetarian, or I prefer to put meat into it. When we got to the Earth Lodge and I met Catalina and learned that she made presumably one of the best Guatemalan Pepion stews, I had to learn from her how to do it. I realized that Pepion stew is fascinating because everyone has their slight own variation. One of the ways that you can actually make the Pepion also consistently thicken is by toasting masaca, moving it continually, flipping it, tossing it, stirring it. And because as it starts to brown, if you don't do that, half of it will still be uncooked. The meat I chose was chicken. It was the most accessible and it's also one of the cheaper options. And much like the braised chicken thigh that we did for Oaxaca, what I did was I seared the chicken thighs and then put them into the stew and let them continue cooking. You can add in a lot of vegetables to just add more substance of chunked up potatoes and carrots and cook them in the stew as well. As you're reheating it, you're gonna wanna also make some tortillas with it. You don't need any fat for the tortillas because water is enough to allow them to cook. If you add a little bit of fat to them, they will be a little more delicate and soft. However, I prefer to take the healthy route and just use water and the dry maseca. It's simple, you mix it and work it into a ball, trying not to overwork it. You can do these with your hand as Catalina did, but it's a lot easier that if you just take a flat pan and cut the sides off of a Ziploc bag, the plastic will allow it from sticking to the pan and the table below, and you can peel it off and cook them very easily. It's a great way to sop up the little bits, and I prefer to almost just throw the stew and the chicken all into the tortillas, making really messy little sloppy Pepion tacos. So with the beef tamales, what we're doing is we're taking whatever sort of spices we have in our spice cabinet that we think will work. Things like garlic, paprika, cayenne, oregano. All of these flavors are going to add extra delicious tones to the braised beef. Searing the beef hard on both sides and then covering it with water, slowly simmering it. That's not a boil, that's soft little bubbles that barely are noticeable coming up the sides for at least an hour, preferably 2 hours. It's easy to remove the fatty chunks. They won't really add much flavor and they'll have a bad mouthfeel. But take the fibers of the beef and shred it down. The masa dough, what you want is nice, airy lard, whipped light. After you've made the masa dough, you want to put it into the refrigerator and let it set on itself for about a half an hour. This gives you time to work on the other tamales. If you don't feel comfortable that all the masa is within the corn husk, you can add a second corn husk around it to make sure that none of the masa is going to seep out during the cooking process. For the corn tamales, what I ended up doing is taking the corn, blending it down into a puree, thickening it as the water reduced out of it, and then folding more corn in for extra texture. You can add any sort of vegetables you want. If you want it sweet, add a little bit of sugar to the corn, and you can have these for breakfast. The most important part about cooking them is making sure that they do not get touched by the water. If you don't have an insert to your pot for steaming, you can make one quite easily using tin foil. What I do is I take a long strip and just wrap it around into a donut shape to give a base, and then take another long flat piece and lay it, hanging it over the edges of the pot, so as the tamales go in, the foil can withstand the weight of the tamales. You want to soak the corn husks for at least 20-30 minutes. This not only rinses them off, but it makes them more pliable. Take 1 or 2 of the husks and tear it into thin strips, tying the strips together to make ties that will hold the tamales. Essentially what tamales are small little packages of the masa dough and their filling. Make them in bulk and feel free to freeze them later. The cooking time will vary on if it's frozen or if it's thawed, but you can determine if you prefer a nice firm tamale or if you like it a little softer and goopy. It will take at least 45 minutes before it starts to set itself.
Jesus, don't cry. You can rely on me, honey. You can combine anything you want. All year round, you ride above the stars. Each one is a setting sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Two chords strum down your cheeks, bitter melodies, turning your orbit around. Don't cry, you can rely on me, honey. You can come by anytime you want. I'll be around. You were right above the stars. Each one is a setting sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Two chords strum down your cheeks, bitter melodies, turning your orbit around. Voices one, skyscrapers are scraping together. Your voice is smoking the last cigarettes. All you can get, turning your orbit around. Our love, is all we have. Our love is all of God's money. Everyone is just a burning sun. Tall buildings shake, voices escape, singing sad, sad songs. Two chords strum down your cheeks, bitter melodies, turning your orbit around. Voices whine, skyscrapers are scraping together. Your voice is smoking the last cigarettes. All you can get,